It was a really big deal that the Ladybird browser was going to adopt Swift. However, the turns have tabled and a new path is being taken, and it seems like basically nobody read past the title of the blog post. Ladybird adopts Rust with help from AI, and I kinda see why people stopped reading here and immediately formed their opinions. We'll get to that. Along with this, the Swift tracking issue has now been closed as, well, they're not using Swift anymore, so there's no reason to keep it open. There's a few things to say here regarding AI use, but also the fact that Andreas Kling basically said that Rust is not suitable to build a browser in. All of that is actually addressed in the post, and we'll get to it. For most of the project's life, the core language has been C++, but they've been looking for a memory-safe alternative. That is one of the reasons why Swift was being discussed. Now, memory safety, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is not a unique feature of Rust. Most modern languages are memory safe. What makes Rust special is the way it does it. We're not getting into that here. The problem with Swift is the C++ interop never quite got there because they had all this C++ code and they didn't want to just throw it all away, so they want to actually make use of that in the rewrite of the codebase, and platform support outside of the Apple ecosystem was limited. Swift is technically a cross-platform language, and you can write Linux applications with it. You can write Windows applications with it, but at its heart, it's still very much an Apple product. Rust is a different story. The ecosystem is far more mature for systems programming. This is what people have been doing with Rust for most of its life, and many of the contributors already know the language. Going forward, we are rewriting parts of Ladybird in Rust. Now, why Rust? When we originally evaluated Rust back in 2024, we rejected because it's not great at C++ style OOP. The web platform object model inherits a lot of 1990s OOP flavor with garbage collection, deep inheritance hierarchies, and so on. Rust's ownership model is not a natural fit for that. Natural is a key part there. So when the web was being formed, Java was the really popular language, and a lot of engineers at the time really adored the classic way of doing OOP, and that kind of seeped into the way the web was designed, so it's kind of more natural to do things in that OOP style way. That doesn't mean that you can't go and do so without doing that. You can absolutely build a browser with Rust. Servo is a testament to that. But people often reference this podcast clip when talking about Ladybird and Rust. Basically, what is said here is the same as what is said here. It's not impossible, it's just kind of awkward, and concepts don't naturally map. Now, before we go to the next bit, I want to address a couple of things. Firstly, compile time. This is something that is always brought up anytime Rust is in a discussion. Oh, if you introduce Rust into your codebase, it's going to make things take way longer to compile. And this is true. If we compare it to like a straight up C codebase, absolutely. And this is a compiler architectural problem that still needs to be worked on. However, I don't think anyone actually knows about Swift because, to my understanding, Swift is even worse. So this is actually a speed upgrade from where they were going. Let alone the fact that you as the user were probably never actually going to compile a browser anyway, and instead wait for binaries to be available. Also, I want to show a comment made about a year ago regarding Rust. My general thoughts on Rust from Andreas Kling: excellent for short-lived programs to transform input A to output B. This is also mentioned in the podcast. Clunky for long-lived programs that maintain large, complex object graphs. So if you're trying to do some object-based method like the web is, it's a little bit weird. Really impressive ecosystem and a toxic community. I'm seeing some people try to turn these words against him, but here's the thing about a community. You don't need to give a shit about a language community. The only community that actually matters is the community around your project, and that's something that you can directly control. After another year of treading water, it's time to make the pragmatic choice. Rust has the ecosystem and the safety guarantees we need. Both Firefox and Chromium have already begun introducing Rust into their codebases, and we think it's the right choice for Ladybird too. Basically, Swift wasn't progressing at the pace that they wanted it to actually continue down this path, and going back to regular C++ was just not really an option. They further evaluated the language and deemed, whilst this is not a perfect choice, it is the best choice we have available. Again, I've seen some people treat this as this like weird, heretical, impossible stance to take. How dare you say you don't like Rust in the past, but then you change your mind and now you're adopting Rust in the codebase. How dare you do this? This is so horrible. I think because some people were treating, especially with that podcast clip, Andreas Kling as this sort of fighter against Rust. He doesn't want Rust to invade our projects, which was never his stance. His stance was simply, it was not the best option to build a browser because that sort of, like, I guess imagined idea has now been broken. Now suddenly this is a drastic shift. Andreas is looking at Rust, looking at Swift, looking at C++ as tools, as programming languages, and is going to use the best one for the job. It's not a sports team. It's not a team that you can betray because you realize that maybe something was a better path to go down, even if it's not a perfect option. Now, because this was C++, there are going to be people talking about the FOSS project, completely compatible memory safety for C and C++. This is a really cool project, this is a really interesting project, and makes a lot of sense for old legacy code bases. A lot of people don't want to address the problems which exist with FOSS. Firstly, it has a massive performance overhead. If performance is critical, which for the web you want a fast web browser, FOSS does not make any sense whatsoever. You're much better off writing in a new language. Secondly, FOSS is memory safe. The way it's memory safe is by ensuring the program crashes if you do some runtime illegal operation. It is not doing build time static analysis. This is not like the Rust borrow checker. FOSS is a great debugging tool. If you're testing out all the code paths and you want to know what is going to do an illegal memory operation, that is a great way to clean up your C and C++ code. But it's not comparable to what Rust is doing. Rust ensures that if you're doing something illegal, the program won't build. FOSS lets the program build and run, and then crashes at that illegal operation. Also, I've noticed that the people that talk about Rust platform support, which is a lot better than I think most people seem to realize it is, never talk about FOSS platform support, which is just x86-64. So, if platform support is your concern, FOSS isn't even part of the equation. Speaking of platform support, Rust does support all of the platforms that Ladybird was going to support in the first place. It's not trying to support some, 40-year-old architecture that 3 people are using. It wants to do Windows, Mac, Linux, x86-64, presumably ARM, maybe RISC. All of that is covered. Now to the fun part. Porting of lib.js, the Ladybird JavaScript engine. You know what? I do appreciate they don't give it some, stupid fancy name. I also appreciate the fact that nobody had used the name lib.js. I don't know how that name was free. The Lexer, Parser, AST, and bytecode generator are relatively self-contained and have extensive test coverage through test 262, which made them a natural starting point. This is something very important when doing any sort of porting, whether it's AI or not. Having a good test suite that you know that things are good. Not that you run it and it's like, oh yeah, that seems like it kind of is good. Actually having a verifiable state. Test suites are obviously not perfect and you do need to do that additional testing, but as you do that additional testing, you can expand out the test suite. And here we have the controversial part. I use Claude Code and Codex for the translation. Oh my god, The browser is vibe-coded. Ladybird is a vibe-coded project now. Project dead. I'm never using Ladybird again. I understand having an issue with AI and wanting no AI in the project whatsoever. Completely reasonable take. And if that's reason enough to stop supporting Ladybird, understandable. But it's not just blindly vibe-coded. This was human-directed, not autonomous code generation. I decided what to port, in what order, and what the Rust code should look like. Basically, using it as a tool rather than just saying, go and do all of the work for me. It was hundreds of small prompts, steering the agents where things needed to go. After the initial translation, I ran multiple passes of adversarial review, basically AI review, asking different models to analyze the code for mistakes and bad patterns. Again, a lot of people stop reading here and they're like, oh my god, that means that there was no human review whatsoever. There was no testing done. Literally, just continue reading the post. Whether AI is or is not involved with porting to another language, there are two main issues with doing so. Problem one, is it correct? I don't just mean, does it compile? If it doesn't compile, obviously it's wrong. But when you run it, is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is it a comparable feature set? Does it have new regressions? Does it have the old bugs still there? Is it working like it should be? And secondly, is the code actually maintainable? Is it weird spaghetti code? Is it doing hacks that it shouldn't be doing? Are things just randomly hard-coded to pass the test suite? Is the code idiomatic for the language you are writing in? Is it sane code for that language? For the first, the requirement from the start was byte-for-byte identical output from both pipelines. The result was about 25,000 lines of Rust, and the entire port took about 2 weeks. The same work would have taken me multiple months to do by hand. We've verified that every AST produced by the Rust parser is identical to the C++ one, and all the bytecode generated by the Rust compiler is identical to the C++ compiler's output. 0 regressions across the board, and no performance regressions on any of the JS benchmarks we track either. Now, there could very well be undocumented edge cases where things actually do perform worse, and that's why you take the next step. Beyond the test suites, I've done extensive testing by browsing the web in a lockstep mode where both the C++ and Rust pipelines run simultaneously, verifying the output is identical for every piece of JavaScript that runs through them. Basically, by all reasonable metrics, it was a clean port. At least for the functionality. And here we get into some of the problems. The code is not good Rust code. If you look at the code, you'll notice it has a strong translator from C++ vibe. That's because it is translated from C++. Basically, it looks like you're writing C++ with a Rust syntax, which is fine, and the code works, but it's not how you write Rust code. The Rust code intentionally mimics things like the C++ register allocation patterns so that the two compilers produce identical bytecode. Correctness is a close second. We know the result isn't idiomatic Rust, and there's a lot that can be simplified once we're comfortable retiring the C++ pipeline. That cleanup will come in time. The first goal was to get the Rust codebase and make sure it's not introducing a bunch of regressions. Then, from there, you go and clean it up and make it sensible Rust code. Remember, Ladybird is still in pre-alpha. They don't even ship binaries just yet. This is the time where you can make stupid breaking changes that isn't going to affect anyone. So, what happens next? This is not becoming the main focus of the project. They're not giving up everything just to port the code. We will continue developing the engine in C++, and porting subsystems to Rust will be a sidetrack that runs for a long time. New Rust code will coexist with existing C++ through well-defined interop boundaries. This is also part of the reason why they needed a good interop, because they weren't just going to give up everything and then write it in the new language. We want to be deliberate about which parts get ported and in what order, so the porting effort is managed by the core team. Please coordinate with us before starting any porting work so nobody wastes the time on something we can't merge. I know this will be a controversial move. Oh, it was. But I believe it's the right decision for Ladybird's future. Andreas Kling, founder and president. One thing we've seen discussion about is, if they're going with Rust, why not just bring in Servo? Why even go and build your own browser when there's already a Rust browser that exists? And that kind of defeats the whole purpose of Ladybird. Ladybird, from the very beginning, is trying to be its own independent browser engine. Yeah, they could have just relied on Chromium, or could have just relied on Firefox. But that's not the point of the project, and just because they are changing language doesn't suddenly mean that, oh, the project is now over, and they're going to do Servo instead. Now, there are some parts that are taken from Chromium that is important, but the core elements of the project are their own independent thing. Now, this whole move does raise some very interesting questions about the alpha and about binaries. Right now, the FAQ is saying, we are targeting 2026 for a first alpha version on Linux and macOS. This will be aimed at developers and early adopters. This text was already here before they did this migration. Now, considering that they are continuing the development of things and then slowly porting things over, I'm gonna assume that this remains unaffected, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is delayed, a couple of months, and maybe instead of being mid-2026, ends up being late 2026. I'm not running the Ladybird browser, right? It's still in way too early of a state, but I am apprehensively excited. Interested? I'm curious. I'm curious to see where this goes. Is this going to be a case of, oh, we went from Swift to Rust, and then 2 years from now, oh, Rust isn't doing it, let's go to another language, and then another language, and then another language? Or is this a situation where Rust is going to be a suitable replacement, and they stick with that long term? Because going from language to language, you're just going to be wasting time. I will be keeping an eye on the project. When the alpha is out, I'll absolutely be testing it. And hey, I like there being another browser option. Even if it's going to take a while to get there, I like the fact that somebody is actually building it. But let me know your thoughts. Has this immediately turned you off the project, whether it be the AI use, or if you're one of the people that just hate everything to do with Rust? I'd love to know. So, let me know your thoughts down below. If you like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I wish I was a bird.
Like this.